Hey everyone, Jared here from TruckSafe Consulting. In this short video, we're going to focus on unidentified driving events that are being recorded on your electronic logging devices and the reasons why tracking and assigning these unidentified driving events is so critical for motor carriers. So stay tuned, and if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe below so you can stay up to date on all of our free DOT compliance related content. Also, please feel free to comment with any questions or video topics you'd like to see in the future. As we've mentioned in prior videos, hours of service is double weighted in the context of an audit, meaning if you do poorly in the area of hours of service during a DOT compliance investigation or audit, it's very likely you will receive a proposed conditional safety rating. Now, ELDs and hours of service are forever intertwined unless you're subject to one of the few exemptions related to ELD use. I want to make two terms clear that are important for this conversation. These terms relate to the different critical pieces of every ELD system. Inside the truck, I and many others will refer to the ELD itself as the interface. In the carrier run and monitored piece of the ELD system, I'll call this the back office. The ELD mandate requires the automatic recording of drive time anytime a commercial motor vehicle exceeds a 5 mph threshold. Anytime a driver is not logged in or the device is unplugged or powered down, there will still be unassigned mileage attributed to the ELD if that vehicle hits this 5 mph threshold. The ELD mandate also requires that an ELD associate all non-authenticated operation of a commercial motor vehicle with a single ELD account labeled unidentified driver. This unidentified driver events profile is essentially the unidentified driving events report. If an ELD records unidentified driving events and those events remain unassigned on the ELD, each time a driver enters the truck and logs in, the ELD interface will notify the driver of the existence of unassigned driving events. It is critical that carriers educate and encourage drivers to assume the unidentified events on the device to the extent possible, as enforcement can sometimes see the unidentified driving events on the device, which can lead to a false log violation. This and many other testing-based requirements can be found in the ELD test plan and procedures. So if you're looking to test your current ELD solution against some of these requirements, just do a simple web search for this publicly available ELD test plan and procedures document. Many of the test cases are clear and concise, but some of the test cases get into the weeds and become somewhat complicated. But there are many straightforward tests you could perform. When I test an ELD solution, I always perform these test cases and some of my own that I've created over the years. Practically speaking, I've seen a drastic improvement in the FMCSA investigators' knowledge on ELDs and the agency's ability to pinpoint problem areas. Unfortunately, this means that certain reports such as unidentified driving events and personal conveyance reporting are being requested during an investigator's review of hours of service compliance. Clearly, knowing what your unidentified driving events report looks like and how to run this report, among others, is not something you want to be learning in the middle of an audit. In addition to this, I've also seen a drastic improvement in roadside enforcement's ability to detect and follow up on unidentified time on the device. It's critical that motor carriers understand what enforcement will see at roadside. To this end, many ELDs offer an inspection mode or an enforcement mode on the device. Here's essentially how inspection mode typically works. A driver stopped at roadside and enforcement requests the transfer of logs. If for some reason the ELD is unable to transfer those logs, the mandate allows for the actual ELD interface to be used as a backup to the different transfer methods. And I'll pause here and mention that it's not necessarily a violation for the ELD to fail to transfer logs, but it is a violation if the driver doesn't know how to transfer logs. Okay, so roadside's looking at the interface to examine the logs. Prior to handing over the device, a driver should always select inspection mode. The reason for this is that inspection mode restricts roadside enforcement's ability to poke around the device and look at messaging, unidentified driving events, or other issues outside the driver's current and previous 7 days of logs. Most ELDs that offer inspection mode require that a driver enter a 4-digit code prior to entering inspection mode, and then the code must be re-entered prior to seeing normal ELD functionality returned. To go one step further, some ELDs will still show unidentified driving events even while inspection mode. All of this to say, at roadside, the carrier must understand the details of inspection mode and educate drivers on inspection mode. Also, carriers must understand how enforcement may see unidentified driving events on the interface and be sure to assign those unidentified driving events on a regular basis through the back office. So, how do you, as the motor carrier, catch and assign unidentified driving events? First, know how to run your reports. Many ELDs have a highly visible reports tab located in the back office of the ELD system. If you currently have an ELD solution with no report capability, I would check with your vendor immediately on that. If no reporting capabilities are offered, even after inquiring with your vendor, this should raise red flags on whether this solution is one that is appropriately benefiting your fleet, as most all ELD solutions offer some level of reporting. Additionally, if your back office does not offer some way for you to view or monitor the required unidentified driver profile, the device is likely not compliant, as it may not be storing unidentified driving events under the single unidentified driver profile we just discussed. Next, after your unidentified driving events report is in hand, you should begin working the unidentified driving events from the most recent events first. The thinking here is that you'll eventually align with the 6-month document retention period for hours of service records, and it really doesn't make sense to start with the 6-month old events because this process will undoubtedly take more time to complete than you might think. When you're working this report, you must determine the appropriate driver that should have the unidentified events assigned to them. Keep in mind, use VINs, truck numbers, GPS coordinates, bills of lading, and other information to your advantage in determining which driver should be assigned these events. When you assign the unidentified event to a driver, you're really just proposing an edit to the driver's log. It is then up to the driver to accept or reject the unidentified driving event. Once the edit to the driver log is accepted, the unidentified driving event should come off the report. If there's unidentified driving time in your report that cannot be assigned due to it being generated by a third-party mechanic or a terminated driver, be sure you at least annotate the driving event to make it clear that you've looked at the event and it can't be moved from the unidentified driving profile. Once you start identifying problematic drivers who have significant unidentified driving events, counsel those drivers and educate them on proper ELD use. Most importantly, make it clear to the driver that you're actively monitoring unidentified driving events going forward. If you don't have a progressive discipline policy to utilize here, now would be a great time to place a progressive discipline policy in your driver handbook or hours of service or ELD policy. Another question here, what types of things are drivers actually doing to generate unidentified driving events? I'll offer a few examples of some actions I've observed that will generate unidentified driving events. First, and very commonly, a driver simply may unplug their device at some point during the course of their workday. I've seen a lot of carriers not catch the unplugging of devices because the hours of service violation report will not show this driver in violation. And unless the driver is looking at unidentified driving events, this driver could continue using this method to extend drive time on a regular basis. Another less common report that would catch this activity is the odometer jump report. Certainly, the odometer jump report is useful in catching those unplugged driving segments, but it's also useful in catching a glitchy ELD that may be registering odometer jumps that are just simply not humanly possible and would indicate a device that needs updating or maintenance from the vendor. A more specific example, if a driver was to pick up a load at a receiver, unplug their device, drive off and deliver that load, and then drive back to the same receiver and then plug the ELD back in, the GPS readings on the ELD would not draw any red flags, but significant unidentified miles would be logged here. This is a driver that's purposefully falsifying their records of duty status and should be dealt with accordingly. After all, these hours of service violations are most impactful to the motor carrier, so catching those drivers who are deliberately creating false logs is in your best interest as a motor carrier. Next, say your fleet slip seats or you have drivers using different trucks on any given day. Some ELDs connect the interface to the engine control module, or ECM, via Bluetooth connection. I've seen instances where a driver connects to the ECM of the wrong truck via Bluetooth and takes off down the road. This is not necessarily an ill-willed action or purposeful falsification, but a careless mistake that can be avoided with a little bit of attentiveness on the part of the driver. I've also seen many instances where a driver simply forgets to log onto the ELD and generates a small segment of unidentified drive time. Again, this is unlikely a purposeful action, but one that is due to inattention and is easily avoidable. There are many ways in which a driver may generate unidentified drive time, so feel free to leave your own examples of common or uncommon instances where you've seen unidentified drive time generated, as I always seem to learn things when I work with motor carriers on these types of issues. Remember, the time to get unidentified driving events under control is now, not when you are flagged for a DOT audit. If you have specific questions for me on ELDs, policies, technical specifications, or whatever, feel free to go to our website and send me a message or simply post a comment below. If you're interested in even more in-depth discussions of the federal safety regulations, take a look at our comprehensive online compliance courses for drivers and safety managers at trucksafeacademy.com. And be sure to follow us on social media, where we post regular updates on DOT compliance issues. Thanks for watching, and be well.